Better Call Saul Season 6 Episode 13 has just released on Netflix and AMC, and in the finale, we get an episode about regret, with Saul Goodman embarking on his final journey and suffering the consequences for everything that he has done in the past. In this spoiler review, I'm going to be giving you my recap of the Better Call Saul Season 6 finale, entitled Saul Gone, alongside discussing my general thoughts towards it. But before I get into it, if you want to see more videos on the ending of Better Call Saul, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive into my recap and review for Better Call Saul Season 6 Episode 13. So Better Call Saul has made quite the closing statement about its place in the pantheon of TV, and it goes out in the most fitting way possible. We see a lot of shows fail to capture the perfect ending, or to be more truthful, the right ending, and now with this prequel show, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould have stuck the landing twice in a row. No one would have thought back in 2015 that Better Call Saul would have gone on for 6 seasons, delivered such a masterful final run, and be placed alongside Breaking Bad as one of the best shows ever made. Only a few shows have managed to reach this quality, and its ending is one that is going to keep people watching and talking about it for many years to come. But before I continue with my thoughts on the show's conclusion, it's time to break down everything that happened in the build up to this ending and discuss what it all means for Jimmy McGill, who's reached the final stage in his journey. The series finale of Better Call Saul begins with a flashback to Season 5's Bagman episode, one of my personal favourites of the entire show, and we get a conversation between Jimmy and Mike after they struggle through the desert and find a water tank to drink from. They take a moment during their walk back, and Jimmy suggests to Mike that they run off with the $7 million they're carrying across the desert. Mike of course says no to this, but it leads to Jimmy mentioning about using this money to build a time machine. And with that, he asks what Mike would do if he was able to travel back in time. Mike's first reply is December the 8th, 2001, which is the day his son was murdered, but then he soon changes that to March 17th, 1984, which is the day he took his first bribe. And this is of course the first of many decisions that eventually led to his son's death. He continues saying that he'd also go forward in time to check on whether others are doing okay, presumably hinting at his granddaughter and Stacy. And after those heartfelt answers, we then turn to Jimmy and get an idea of what this episode is going to truly be about. In his answer, he'd go back to the day Warren Buffett took over Berkshire Hathaway, and he'd invest in it so that he'd now be super rich. Mike asks him, is that it? Money, nothing you'd change? And Jimmy walks off without answering this question, making this the perfect opening to really get us thinking about whether Jimmy would ever change considering everything he's caused and been through. And it's also just great to see a reflective final scene with Mike, knowing everything that goes down with his character after this moment. But after this cold open, we then come back to the Gene timeline, which continues after that eventful ending with Marion last week. Gene escapes on foot following Marion's call to the police, in which she reads out the license plate of his car, and he goes straight home as quickly as he can, grabs his secret shoebox, and escapes via a window after spotting cops at the front of his house. He makes a run for it, but then sees a helicopter scanning the area, and is ultimately forced to hide in a dumpster when he sees more cops on the ground in the surrounding area. And we come to what that teaser promo for the episode was actually alluding to. to. He opens the shoebox and is about to call Ed the Disappearer, but while he practices his lines and gets out his diamond stash, he ends up dropping the box and what's inside to the bottom of the dumpster. There's no escape for him now, and after rattling around in there for a while, trying to find what he dropped, we hear a knock on the bin, and the cops have finally caught him. Once at the police station, there are cops watching his Saul Goodman commercials, trying to confirm that they indeed have found the right person, and Gene uses his one call to tell an employee at Cinnabon that they are going to need a new manager. He's soon in a jail cell, and on the wall is written, "My lawyer will ream your ass," leading him to bawl out laughing in a scene that reminded me of Walter White's laugh from Crawl Space, but it also places an idea in his mind. He demands another call and rings Bill Oakley, who we saw referenced a few episodes ago, and he offers him the role of advisory counsel. Gene initially sees this as an opportunity to soften the consequences coming, and like always, he sees a way out of a bad situation. But we soon learn that his best bet is an extremely reduced prison sentence. That's because Bill goes with Gene to a meeting with the feds, and to our surprise, Marie Schrader is also present. They offer him 30 years if he'll plead guilty, and Marie tells him face to face how much issues he's really caused alongside how brave Hank and Gomez were before they died. In reference to Walter White, she tells him, "You helped the two-faced poisonous bastard behind it all, you did it all for money." But even as things are incredibly unwinnable for Gene, he wants to try to move that prison sentence even more. He offers her his condolences for Hank and says, "You and he are victims, and so am I." He proceeds to give fake motivation as he reflects on the moment that Walter and Jesse threatened him at gunpoint in front of an open grave, and says that he only went ahead as his lawyer because he feared for his safety. We know that's not the case after the last few episodes, and Gene tells them that he only needs one member of the jury to help him, trying to negotiate with them to bring the sentence down even more. The feds eventually bring this down to 7 years and go ahead with the prison of his choice. He even tries to push his luck further and asks for premium ice cream every day while he's inside, and in turn, he'll offer more info on Howard Hamlin's death. But that's where he comes up stuck, as the feds tell him that Kim has already told them everything about Howard, which is what we got a suggestion of in last week's episode, and in turn, Gene is quite rattled. It's the moment that I think he truly realizes that Kim has owned up following her regrets, but it's also an illuminating moment that allows him to know that Kim is the only one who has a chance of getting out free. He's gone well beyond that and hasn't changed for the better since those slipping Jimmy and Saul Goodman days. And this brings us to the second of 3 flashbacks in this finale, and we finally get the anticipated scene between Walter White and Saul, set during the time of the Granite State episode from Breaking Bad, while they are both waiting to be shipped off with new identities. I did predict in my video that we might get something around this Breaking Bad episode, and I think what we did get was a continued evolution of that opening scene with Mike. Saul once again asks the time machine question to Walter, and while he ignores that question as scientifically impossible, he realizes that the true question is about regrets. Walt's answer focuses on the critical moment with grey matter, in which he blames them for influencing him to leave his own creation, and how he now could have been extremely rich if he'd stayed. And Saul's answer this time is that he'd go back to when he fell outside a store and really hurt his knee. Walter laughs in response and says, "So you were always like this." And that's the second of these flashbacks with impactful figures in the Breaking Bad world who are surprised that he would neither not have a proper regret, or that he wouldn't change something that led him down bad choice road. Where Walter White's story was about change following a set of previous events, Jimmy's is about how changing is hard, how he degraded through the influence of family, and how he ultimately attaches to those bad impulses. The reverse Breaking Bad, if you will, and a story that has definitely changed the way we see that show because of how the smaller details build to produce the consequences we've seen unfold. But moving on, we now come to the foreseen court scene that ends this show as a sort of reflection to how it started. Before we do get to that, we do get a few scenes before though, and one that includes Saul and Bill on a plane to Albuquerque, with Gene asking him what will happen to Kim. We learn that the DA probably won't file charges, but Bill says that she is facing civil litigation from Howard's wife. Gene offers to tell the feds more about Howard's death than Kim, and while Bill says that it could put more pressure on her, he says that the feds are gonna like this. And that's where we stop in with Kim, who we learn is volunteering at a free help service in Florida. While there, she gets a call from Suzanne Erickson, who tells her that Saul was arrested and that he is going to be giving a testimony that affects her. And in comes that court trial scene, which is, in my opinion, one of the best scenes of the entire show. Kim is present watching Jimmy show up for his hearing, wearing a Saul Goodman-esque suit and quietly telling himself in a reverse to the beginning of the series, it's showtime. It's soon clear to us that Marie and Gomi's widow are also there too, and once seated, the judge immediately questions why Jimmy is getting such a small sentence. So he takes the stand after convincing the judge to do so and offers to clear things up. He initially gives the story he gave before about being Walt's prisoner, but then he decides to change. After swearing in, he admits that he helped build Walt's drug empire, and he says that he lied about Kim's involvement because he wanted her to come to this trial and hear him tell the truth. He says, "I was more than a willing participant. I was indispensable. Walt would have soon been dead or in prison without me. Hank and Gomez would still be alive. Walter White couldn't have done it without me." He looks directly at Kim and then continues, choking up on what happened to Howard, and then saying that Kim did good for starting her life again. He says that he's the one who ran away, and then proceeds to talk about his brother Chuck with one of the best uses of cinematography I've seen in this entire show. We cut to the courtroom's buzzing exit sign, reminding us of that final shot of Chuck in court before he committed suicide, and Jimmy goes on to call him the best lawyer he ever met. He blames himself for not helping him and says, "Instead, when I saw a chance to hurt him, I took it." And after Bill tries to insist that what happened to Chuck wasn't a crime, Gene says that it was and tells all of them that he wants to be called Jimmy McGill. He turns back to look at Kim one last time in the courtroom, and the rest of them continue to argue over giving him the maximum prison sentence. So Jimmy has confessed his regrets and told the truth about it all, choosing to do the right thing. And in that mention of Chuck in the trial scene, the following sequence actually gives us one final flashback between Jimmy and his brother, set just before the series premiere, with Jimmy bringing him groceries and telling him about his small clients. Chuck tells him, "If you don't like where you're heading, there's no shame in going back and changing your path." And he says this while holding onto the H.G. Wells Time Machine book, giving us a quite reflective end on the episode's flashback scenes. That book is not really about time travel. In fact, it's actually about class struggles and the nature of one's being. Saul Goodman was someone who had big plans, and once he got that life of wealth and saw it all crumble, he was confronted with the one thing that sent him down this path: the loneliness that comes in the consequences. Jimmy McGill was genuine to others he cared about, and Saul Goodman was more self-concerned, but they were part of the same being. There's that central theme of regret, but then there's also the one of the inevitable, with there being no other way that this could have gone for Jimmy. His identities were all linked to one being, and that person is now at peace with himself, following a confession with truthful regrets. And this is better exemplified by the final scene of this fantastic show. Jimmy is on a prison bus on his way to the prison that he didn't want to go to, specifically nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Other prisoners recognize him as Saul Goodman, and while he initially tries to tell them that his name is McGill, the whole bus erupts in chanting Better Call Saul, and Jimmy does give a small smile in response. Once in the prison, he's baking just like he did at Cinnabon, and a prison guard tells him that his lawyer has come to see him. Jimmy goes to the room to find Kim there, and she tells him that her New Mexico bar card doesn't expire. He's uncuffed and they both have the room to share a cigarette together in a shot against the wall that reflects the opening moment with Kim in the very first episode. Kim, in the most Wexler ways possible, says to him, "You had them down to 7 years, and now that has become 86 years. He replies, "But with good behaviour, who knows?" We know that's probably not going to change, but Kim's admiration not just of slipping Jimmy's ways, as we've seen before, but also of him doing the right thing and following her in the truth, makes this moment all the more powerful. It did need that final scene between the two of them to really make it perfect, and to see them repeating their first moment in a new context is really satisfying to see. And this is only heightened even more when we reach the final few shots between them. Kim eventually leaves the prison and she spots Jimmy on the way out at a nearby basketball court, watching her through a chained fence, and he eventually gives her the famous finger guns. It's a heartwarming bit of reflection to their relationship, but also an acknowledgement of what both of them have become. They're standing on the opposite sides of freedom, and they have become exactly what they always were going to. Kim admires Jimmy's ways and associates with that herself when they are here together, but she's also made changes on the outside for the better, always being the more morally grounded of the two. And Jimmy has owned up to his regrets, made it right with Kim, and he's exactly where he should be. He deserves to be in a prison with other criminals who admire the Saul persona, and it's a bittersweet touch on this whole journey. So what are my overall thoughts of this final episode? Well, Saul Gone is a masterful ending to a consistently engaging storyline, and I think we ultimately got the right ending. Saul is a show about the degrading nature and influence of family, and how an individual can in turn attach to their worst impulses. It then evolves by showing how change is hard, and how connecting moments can impact that cycle. This is the apparent end of Gilligan's Breaking Bad world, and it's satisfying and appropriate that Saul Gone is not just a love letter to the central stories and characters involved in it all, but that it's also a very artistic endpoint. Balancing the flashback conversations with the downfall in the Gene timeline truly illuminate that some of the most affecting characters in Jimmy McGill's life all focus on regret. It tells us who Jimmy is, who he has always been, but then makes even clearer how important Kim Wexler was in changing his heart. And the final moments put such a brilliant bookend on all of it. Jimmy doesn't take the 8-year sentence, he comes at peace with himself and does the right thing, and he wanted Kim to see that. And when we're given a look at his prison life, Jimmy seems to be at home in running it, and the other criminals essentially look up to him. It's a bittersweet ending with Jimmy getting exactly what he deserves. He's locked away, but he course corrects with Kim with no regrets. A lot of popular shows change their identity in favour of the bigger ending, but Better Call Saul has remained true to its smaller, impactful decisions that, once explored, become that much more effective. Many people may have predicted that he goes to jail, but none of us could really put our finger on the meaning of that consequence and how it would eventually be used to critique the person he is and how that affects others. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul have given us so many memories and fantastic examples of storytelling, and I must admit, it's really sad now that it's all come to an end. But we'll always remember it, and we can revisit these stories as time passes. Vince and Peter have raised the bar multiple times, and in the end, they did it their way. But that was my spoiler review and recap for the Better Call Saul finale. I'm giving it a rating of 10 out of 10. But to those who have already seen this episode, what are your thoughts towards it, and was there any other things that you picked out surrounding the fate of Jimmy? Let me know down below in the comment section, and stay tuned for more videos on this finale coming in the next few days. For more videos on the ending of Better Call Saul Season 6, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.